Hello everybody, my name is Brianna Bilo and I'm a meteorologist here with the National Weather Service office in Grand Junction, Colorado. And this is your February 2025 monthly climate summary. So starting off with our story of the month, hot on the heels of the but deeply unusual cold that we had in January, we started the month of February with almost a week of record-setting heat. The image here is from the first day of that string of hot weather, February 2nd, where we broke our first record here in Grand Junction with a high of 60, which beat the previous record of 59, which was set in 2003. But the next day, actually February 3rd, we hit a high temperature of 71, and the previous record from 1934 was 59. So we set a new record that was 12 degrees above the previous record that had stood for over 80 years. So definitely an interesting one. This period lasted through February 7th. And not all of the departures that we saw between the previous records and the new records were as crazy as that 12 degree one. Most of them are 1 or 2 degrees like we see here. But it was it felt very early summer-like rather than beginning of February. It was a nice break, but definitely a mixed bag as far as those things go, because we are also significantly lacking in mountain snowpack at the moment. And we did also set a few extra high temperature records at the very end of the month ahead of the cooler and stormier pattern that we entered into for March. So moving into temperatures, as you can see, the majority of these were set during that February 2nd to 7th time period, although we do have a couple, particularly Rifle and Vernal, where their highest temperature of the month occurred at the end of the month with one of those 2 days that I referenced just previously, where we did actually set a few records. Our highest high for the month was 71 in Grand Junction, and that occurred on the 3rd, as I mentioned, followed by 70 in Canyonlands. And our coolest high of the month was 54, which occurred in Craig on the 3rd, 4th, and 6th. Moving into our coldest temperatures of the month, the warmest low that we saw was 15 degrees on the 13th in Grand Junction, and the coldest low that we saw was negative 14 in Craig, also on the 13th. This whole, every low that we saw, lowest low that we saw for the month of February actually occurred on the morning of the 13th, and this was associated with our big Valentine's Day storm, which was the most snow that we've seen in one go since Thanksgiving. But it also brought a pool of colder air with it. Not the coldest that we've seen, obviously that was in January, but definitely reminded us all after that week of, May temperatures that it's still winter. Moving into precipitation though, not so hot. Better than we've seen, because Canyonlands and especially Vernal did better than a trace of precipitation in the whole month, but definitely not so hot. We saw no above normal precipitation during the month. The closest we got was actually Cortez, who was also our big winner, at 1.01 inches of precipitation for the month of February, which is exactly February's normal. Our least precipitation was unfortunately at Vernal, where they received just 1/10 of an inch in the month of February, and this was almost 1/2 an inch below normal. This was also our greatest departure, and I stand corrected. Aspen did actually see a positive departure. They were almost 1/10 of an inch above normal. And that also speaks a little bit to the fact that the mountains, as we've seen over the course of this year, have been doing better than our 10 climate sites would lead you to believe, because the valleys have definitely been, the word I want to use is skunked, but I don't know if that'll go over well. They've definitely seen a lot less precipitation out of these storms in comparison to our mountain ranges. So Aspen being the only one to see above normal precipitation, that tracks. Looking into our drought update, unfortunately, because we definitely saw a deficit of precipitation in the month of February, on the heels of a deficit in precipitation the last 3 months, we are starting to see drought really start to creep in. We've seen a wide expansion of this D2 severe drought, where a good chunk of the lower elevation areas of eastern Utah and western Colorado are now in D2 severe drought, as well as portions of our southern valleys, Durango and Pagosa Springs, and this very, very far southeast corner, or southwest corner of southeast Utah. Try saying that one 3 times fast. There's even the tiniest little sliver of D3 extreme drought sneaking in, but I am hopeful that with this next round of wet atmospheric river-driven storms here in March, that'll go away. Fingers crossed. But we've also seen, to complement this expansion of D2 severe drought, or rather the introduction of severe drought, we've seen an expansion of D1 moderate drought and of abnormally dry conditions to fill in the vast majority of the remainder of the area. The only places that remain drought-free are our central and northern mountains, with maybe just the tiniest sliver on the backside of the eastern Uintas. So definitely not doing so hot. And as far as the monthly drought outlook goes, we are favored to see drought persist in these areas where we already have drought. And as I've mentioned before, areas that see abnormally dry conditions or have no drought then get no signal here, unless there's a very strong feeling that drought development will happen, as you can see in some other parts of the Southwest. So based on this, we're looking at sort of a status quo where areas that have drought will see drought possibly get worse, and areas that don't have drought will remain sort of the same. Can't say that there won't be an expansion of abnormally dry conditions, but we shouldn't see drought develop. Shouldn't being a very heavy lifting word there. As far as our snowpack is concerned, we are definitely seeing that La Nina pattern. I've talked about it in some of my previous videos if you're interested, but basically when we have a La Nina, and the signal isn't super strong, but the signal is that the southern mountains don't do as well, and the northern mountains do pretty okay. So you can kind of see Yampa White and Little Snake Basin and the Colorado Headwaters Basin both at 90 to 100% of normal, where the Gunnison Basin is sitting at 80 to 90% of normal, and the San Miguel, Dolores, Animas, and San Juan basins are only sitting at 70 to 80% of normal. And then moving into eastern Utah, the northern basins, being the northeastern Uintas and the Duchesne Basin, sitting in that 90 to 100% of normal range, and southeastern Utah is not. Southeastern Utah is sitting at that in 55 to 65% of normal. So definitely rougher for our southern basins compared to our northern basins. Although, again, there's a hope that that might change at least a little bit in March as we start to see more of these atmospheric river-fueled systems that are bringing some pretty significant snow to some of our southern ranges. The question is it going to be enough? Because we really only have the month of March and maybe a little bit of April before we start seeing the switch flip on melt out. So we are starting to run out of time as far as snowpack accumulation is concerned, but we might be able to put a little bit of a dent into these numbers. And then looking at our March 2025 outlook per the Climate Prediction Center, as far as temperatures, we are looking at equal chances of above or below normal temperatures for all of eastern Utah and western Colorado. In fact, pretty much all of the Four Corners region, which is promising. It would be more promising if we saw a signal for below normal temperatures, but we'll take what we can get. As far as precipitation is concerned, we are looking at equal chances of above or below normal precipitation as well, with maybe a slight tendency across far southeastern San Juans, a slight tendency towards below normal precipitation. So again, not as favorable as we would like to see, but it could have certainly been a lot worse. If you want to know what a lot worse looks like, you can go and take a look at the seasonal climate summary for the winter months, so December, January, and February, which will also be posted at the same time as this video. So if you want a wrap up of the entire winter season and a little bit of a peek at what people are thinking for the spring season, you can go check that video out. And there's also a written summary for both of these videos if you like to visually see your numbers and take stock of that sort of thing. Those also include some interesting graphics and some record summaries, so you can see all of the 9 records that we set here in Grand Junction during the month of February, as well as other records as they come, but for right now that's the only one. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, and go check out my other videos, and I will see you again next month.